Welcome back. Today we're reviewing the latest William Heavenhill. Is the FOMO justified? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to the Bourbon Retriever. Today is a very, very special day because I get to review the William Heavenhill latest batch coming out this year in 2023. I don't think many of these have been released yet. I only know of two events that they dropped these bottles. One was a dinner they hosted, and then the other was when I got it on Halloween morning. I got super lucky to get it. My brother had just moved to Louisville, and I was going to visit him for Halloween. And while I was there, went down to Heavenhill, got in line, and these were releasing on Halloween morning. So they've been releasing different batches of these since 2008. This is the highest age statement since the original batch. The original batch were 18 to 19 years old. This one is coming in at 17 years old. The proof on this is also substantially higher. This is coming in at 120. Last year's was 109. I forget which year. There was a cask strength somewhere in there, but outside of that one cask strength year, there hasn't been one this high since I think like 2014. These aren't released every year, so I was super lucky to grab one this year. On the back, they have a couple additional specs, which I find super useful. I love it when distilleries put as much information as they can on the label. Sometimes distilleries will put like fancy stories in the back, and those are nice and all, but I just don't find them that useful. But on this one, they talk about how it is comprised of 32 barrels, and they come from the first floor of Rickhouse 1G, and they come from the Bourbon site in downtown Louisville. So this bottle is rather expensive. At the time of purchase, this was the most expensive bottle I had ever purchased. Spoiler alert, I have bought one since. Stay tuned, that will be in review next week. Last year's batch, which was 15 years old and 109 proof, that was priced out the door at $291. So when I saw this on the shelf, 2 years older, proof jumped up a bit. I was like, it has to be a little more. I was expecting to pay maybe $325, maybe even mid threes for it. But when I got to the counter, checked out, it's the exact same price as the last batch, coming out at $291. Now that is still rather expensive and almost just dumb money for whiskey, but I'm pretty sure these bottles are distillery only release, so if I didn't get that day, it's just a bottle I'm not gonna get. Heavenhill hasn't said how many bottles are in this batch. It is 32 barrels, so you would expect to be at least 3,200 bottles. It could be more or less. They were aging for 17 years, so I would fully expect those barrels to be over half empty. So it's really hard to guess exactly how many bottles they might be released. If you guys are ever traveling through Kentucky, Heavenhill normally release something every morning. The issue is they don't tell you what. It could be anything from simple little Elijah Craig hand grenades to Larceny barrel proof, maybe Elijah Craig barrel proofs. Every now and then they'll put something super nice out like an Old Fitz or the William Heavenhill. The other issue is how many bottles they put out. You know, sometimes they only put out like 20 bottles. Sometimes they'll put closer to 100. When I went, it was closer to the 100 bottles, but it's really hard to judge exactly how many they'll put out. So given that you don't know exactly what bottles were released or how many they're gonna have, it becomes rather difficult to guess and decide how long you should wait in line or when you should get to the distillery. But if you are gonna wait in line in the Bardstown area, I think they're the only distillery that releases things that open, so it'd be the one to camp out at. So I opened this bottle the day I got it with my brother on Halloween. So it has some time in the bottle. It's been open for about a month. So it'll be interesting to see how much it's changed. All right, first the aroma. Man, okay. I am not exaggerating when I say I think this might be whiskey of the year nose. Some people talk about how the Michter's 10 has the best nose of the year, maybe the Jack 12, but just with, without blinding next to each other, you won't know for certain. But just sitting here smelling this, I think it would win hands down. It's got the right balance of oak with sweetness, which is really hard for an older age product. You think about the Elijah Craig 18, that is super over oaked. So for this to have the right balance, it's incredible. There's a little bit of leather in there too, and then maybe some Demerara sugar, melted sugar. This is exactly what I want bourbon to smell like. I wish every single bottle I purchased smelled exactly like this. I almost don't even want to drink it because of how great it smells. I think there's a little bit of fruit in there too, but I'm having a hard time picking out which fruit it is. This definitely has a much darker aroma. It's nothing like a Four Roses or a Kentucky Spirit. Those to me are very light and delicate. This is maybe closer to Old Barton Juice, like the Rucks Road Double Barrel, or maybe if Michter's 10 was proofed up higher. So this shows you also what time in a bottle will do. When me and my brother first popped this nose was very mediocre. Nothing special, nothing off-putting. It was a good bourbon, but it wasn't anything fantastic. But what I'm smelling right now, I hate to say it, but might be worth the price given how much better it is than almost any other bourbon I've smelled. So it is whiskey, and I'm sure you guys want to know how this tastes on the palate, so I'll move on to the palate, but just know I could sit here for an hour plus and just smell it. All right, on the palate. All right, that was super complex. I'm gonna need to do another sip to really break it down. There was a lot going on in each stage of the taste from front to back. Almost too much for me just to comprehend, so I'm gonna take another sip and try and break it down a little bit. Okay, on the tip of the tongue, it is super sweet. I'm trying to think like what I would compare it to, like maybe the John J. Bowman, which typically I get that sweetness in the middle of the palate, but what I would get in that John J., maybe even an E.H. Taylor, that sweetness you get in the middle of it, put that in the front, it's the first thing you get, it just smacks you in the face. This is normally surprising for me. Typically I get the rye spice at the end, but in this one I get the rye spice in the middle. And then after the rye spice, it turns into this super sweet fruit, like maybe like an orange peel, something like that. I'm also getting a little bit of tobacco throughout the full tasting experience. It's definitely not over oaked. The oak is there, but it's not tannic. Really balanced with the other parts of this drink. It also has a very good finish. Being 120 proof there, it does have a little bit of a Kentucky hug there in your throat. I'm getting a lot of the flavors on the aftertaste. They linger. I haven't taken a sip in a couple minutes here, and it's still hanging out there in the back of the palate. I am getting a lot of rye spice on this. They don't disclose the mash bill for this bottle, but I wouldn't be shocked if the rye count is relatively high in this bottle. Like, I still think it's a bourbon, but the rye mash bill in this, I have to guess is high because I'm getting just a ton of rye spice that I don't normally get on Elijah Craig products. Another thing that's great about this drink is the transition between the different flavors you're getting on your palate. Sometimes when you get a blend of different barrels, it can be kind of clashing against one another. Either the flavors are clashing or just the transition between flavors doesn't feel like they have good, smooth transitions. And that's one of the great things about this. All the transition throughout the palate is just harmonious and all around great pour when all the flavors come together. So the final score, this is a $300 bottle. It is just absolutely gut-wrenching to try and justify that price in bourbon. This is a consumable. You drink it and it's gone one day. That said, this might be one of the top 3 bottles I have ever tasted. I am absolutely in love with this bottle. If you're a person who is willing to pay top dollar for bottles, I think this is a bottle you should chase down. The issue is availability, right? Like, you can only get these at the distillery, I'm pretty sure, and even then, you don't know what day they're dropping. I paid $300 for this. On secondary, I've been seeing them from anywhere from $750 to some third-party sites putting them at over $1,000. I don't think any bourbon is worth that much money, so I can't tell you to go out there and pay that money for it. But at the end of the day, this is one of the better bourbons that I've ever had. Any reasonable alternatives for this bottle? I don't think there is an alternative for it. At 17 years old, there aren't many bourbons out there that have that age on them with 120 proof that are balanced, right? Like, even the Elijah Craig, the Knob Creek 18, you have those, but they don't bat an eye at this. This is so much better than those bottles. So right now, this is my front runner for Whiskey of the Year. At the end of the year, I will be doing a tasting of all my bottles I got this year and making a ranking of my top 10 for 2023. I don't have access to any of the prior releases. However, I did get a sample of last year's, the 15-year 109 proofer. Someone did me a sample, so I'm gonna do a little side-by-side here to give you guys a little more context of this bottle. Is it on par with other William Heavenhills, better, and whatnot? But I'll be absolutely shocked if the William Heavenhill 15 beats the William Hill 17. All right, on to the nose. All right, the nose on the batch from last year, the 15-year William Heavenhill, it's much more muted. I'm getting a lot more of the sweetness on it, overpowering, like maybe a Buffalo Trace profile, that type of sweetness you'd get. Yeah, it's reminding me of maybe like an E.H. Taylor, just with a little more oak on it. Overall, I think this is a great nose. Another bourbon that I would enjoy the aroma of. I still think, relatively though, the 17 has the better aroma. That 17 is absolutely special. This is good, but that aroma, it's just, I have a hard time comparing it to other bourbons. But the more I smell this 15 is really good. All right, that tastes a lot higher than 109 proof. Frankly, it tastes very similar to the 120. The ethanol is definitely a lot more forward on the 15 batch. The oak is toned down a little more in the 15-year, which would make sense, it's 2 years younger. Again, at the front, you get that nice sweetness, but the transition on this one is much more delayed. You get that nice sweetness, you think you got yourself a good bourbon, and then on the back end, it's like a wave crashing in the ocean. This monster 12-foot wave just comes crashing down on you, and it just punches you in the face with some spice. Yeah, that is so weird. I have not had a bourbon that has a delay like that. You have the front palate where you get that sweetness like I was talking about, and then it feels like it almost kind of dies off, and the bourbon is, it's finished. It goes down your throat, and the experience is over. But right when it drops off, this rye spice just explodes in the back of your palate and just takes over the whole mouthfeel. This also has a really good finish. Again, I could probably wait a minute between sips, and that taste and the flavor would still be on my palate and my tongue. All right, overall, the William Heavenhill 15, the batch from 2022, it is a good pour. I'm enjoying it. I would like to have a bottle of it. However, at $300, I cannot justify the William Heavenhill 15. It's a good pour. It's just when you have so many other LEs out there that are like around the $200 range, that are just as good, like the Lux Row 12-year is a great bottle. Lucky 14 back up here, that's a great bottle. Those are $200. So jumping up to $300, it's a little difficult. But the 17, between the two, and overall, frankly, I would probably buy another bottle at $300 if I was given the chance. This is an absolute dynamite bottle. So if you ever get a chance, if you see the William Heavenhill in a bar or a friend's place or anything like that, try and get a pour. This is a bottle that I think everyone should try and get a taste of at least once. But I know it's going to be almost impossible to very difficult to find. So that's my review of the William Hill 17. Before you head out, check out this video or this video, and until next time, cheers.